This is why I think publications are failing in general. Print obviously could not be reactive. Digital is no longer able to be as reactive as social first sites and websites and Instagram accounts are able to be reactive. So I think this idea of like sitting on content to wait for something that might be borderline archaic at this point is a really bad marketing decision.
This is the Wine and Dine Me podcast. Forget the etiquette. No rules, just real talk. Today on the podcast, I have Sarah Schreiber. Sarah is a weddings editor turned consultant for luxury event professionals with expertise in photo curation, copywriting, and branding. She was formerly the associate editorial director of Brides and Martha Stewart Weddings and has reviewed thousands of weddings over the course of her career. In addition to serving clients, Sarah also manages a TikTok account to support and guide couples currently planning their celebrations, with lots of spicy takes mixed in. Welcome, Sarah. Well, last time I saw you, you were smothering yourself in Bath Body Works cucumber melon at the after party at the Ornament Exchange, living your best
I
life.
literally, I mean, it was so funny. I was running around because I changed into a mini skirt for that. And I'm like, I need lotion on my legs. And I ran around our little dressing room asking anyone for lotion. And naturally, nobody had it because who would bring that? And there it was on the nightstand the whole night. And I got it at the end, and a little touch of nostalgia too.
That was so good. That was so good that, for people who don't know what we're talking about Abby Zhu and Lauren Prattis's annual ornament exchange. And this one was in Charleston and they just raised the bar big time. I think that was like the unanimous decision at the after party 90s nostalgia, the surprise boy band. I mean, I could go on and on. It was just perfection. So okay, well, let's start first with Pantone of the Year, which was announced actually when we were all together in Charleston. And I think there was a lot of mixed opinions on this, or maybe not so much mixed, but we are talking about Cloud Dancer, which is basically white. And before you share your thoughts, I want to just read the description that Pantone gave. So it is a whisper of tranquility and peace in a noisy world. So, introducing Pantone of the Year, Cloud Dancer, a lofty white that serves as a symbol of calming influence in a society rediscovering the value of quiet reflection. So, and then they go on to say it encourages true relaxation and focus, allowing the mind to wander and creativity to breathe, making room for innovation. Thoughts?
Hmm. I just don't think you can call your color of the year white. I just don't. It just feels so wrong for this moment too, based on the resurgence of color. And I honestly think like the events industry is a really good baseline for what color trends are. And I think with like the resurgence of like maximalism and color layering and color drenching, that we do and look up to, the events that we've seen that have kind of blown our minds have been so colorful. So I think as an industry, we're all like, "Oh, no, this doesn't feel
Yeah.
right." Whereas, like, last year's Mocha Mousse kind of did, like, browns were kind of back in action, I think, in events. I always look at everything through the wedding landscape, but this just feels like you can't be Pantone Color of the Year and be white. It's not a color,
Yeah.
it's not it felt a little bit like a cop out. I mean, I understand it from a, "All right, we need a visual break," type of thing, but, like, do we? I don't think so.
Don't think so either. I also wonder, to be honest, it's the first time I actually read the description of the Pantone because I'm like trying to find the why
Sure.
behind it. And I think maybe they were trying too hard to be like
Yeah.
philosophical.
Yeah, I
I
just
don't
feel
know.
it's
But
not
yeah,
that deep, like, it's choose a color that it feels reflective of this moment, and white isn't it. It's just it.
nope. I agree. I agree. I agree. All right. So good.
Same page.
Noted on that. Speaking of trend forecasting, I'd love to talk to you about that. And my question to you is how did your time in magazines impact your ability to forecast trends? And the second part of that question is now as an independent consultant, how has your own trend forecasting
Great
changed?
question. Okay, so in like the editorial world, you're always looking for the next thing. Because in a lot of ways, like the bridal cycle, the wedding cycle is quite cyclic, right? Like, you get engaged. A lot of this is standard stuff from engagement to planning an engagement party to planning a bridal shower to bachelorette to wedding to anniversary, right? Like these are kind of prescribed touch points on a wedding cycle. So the trends of it all, what's new, what's exciting, kind of allowed us to inject some of that personality and flair, and kind of connect to the now with a topic or subject matter that is quite evergreen. So the trends were always like, what are we doing? What are we talking about? What's next? What's happening? Because it allowed us to kind of capitalize from a traffic perspective, to stand out, to make a punchy splash on social. So that was kind of like it was so important, it was such an important part of the job to have a finger on the pulse. And now, honestly, I don't really think that has changed that much for me. I feel like once you kind of develop that skill and once you start looking for patterns or recognizing, pulling out small tidbits of things that people are doing differently, I don't think it really changes. It's actually like a muscle that you get really good at flexing and then you can kind of use forever. So now I
Yeah.
just use it to like, be on my own social and my own TikTok and help my clients too, like pull out things that feel right for right now. I'm also not, as important as it was in editorial, I feel less compelled by trends now independently. I feel like it's more important, authenticity is more important, style of design. If you're a designer, planner, style of photography. If you're a photographer, you have to be doing things that feel right to you and can't just rely on the trend of it all. So, I would say
Totally.
it's like, it's always gonna be in our world, and it's always gonna be in my world. I think it's interesting, I think it's fun. But from a brand building perspective, I think, I call them exclamation points. We pull on these things as exclamation points, and we build a baseline otherwise.
Yeah, I love that. Where do you look? Like, where do you think is the first place where you start to see a trend
Yeah.
emerging?
I mean, I feel like it's all social for the most part, and I think it's you all too. I've always said that vendors are the ones creating them, and the media was the ones reacting to them. And maybe that's a hot take because I feel like media will say like, "We create them." And I'm like, I don't think media does anymore because media doesn't synthesize a lot of shoots or commission much. It's a lot of, "Can we pull this photo and post it on our social?" So that's, yeah, maybe a hot take, but I don't think media is doing that anymore in a way that, it used to, where it used to be like, we're gonna send a photographer, we're gonna put this together, we're gonna create this idea, creative direct this whole thing, and then create a trend. I think you guys are doing it, and media doesn't have the budget to do it.
Yeah,
So I think
yeah.
that's kind of where we're at right now. So I'm kind of always like, I follow incredible people on the internet, and I feel like there are incredible tastemakers in our space, and then, like, the TikTok of it all too. I think we're all kind of still reacting to what's happening on TikTok, what's happening on Reels, Pinterest, and kind of finding all of these patterns that seem to resonate with, young brides, young couples now, because I think it's shifted a little bit with Gen Z.
Yeah, totally. I also look at red carpet season. I'm always looking at their sets and what are we seeing as far as design, drape, light, all of that. And then obviously like
Of
fashion weeks,
course. Yeah, how
places like
people are
that. Yeah.
designing their runway shows, all of this, like, everything is cumulative, right? Nothing exists in a vacuum. Fashion, design, architecture, all of these things are, I think, driving what we do and what everybody is reacting to, and I think that's amazing too. Yeah, I also love watching a red carpet for fashion trends. I feel like I have always been obsessed with, like, the fashion of it all with weddings in ways that, like, I wasn't so much like a fashion editor ever, but, like, we watched, like, 2 award seasons in a row where guys stepped out in lapel pins, and now I feel like that's finally carrying over into the wedding
Yeah.
world where grooms are like, "Wait, boutonnieres suck." And, like, lapel pins are an heirloom or something that's forever or something that we can do something really interesting with. We can wear a bunch of them. I think men's style has made a resurgence in general on the red carpet, like, they are blowing it out of the water, and I think grooms are kind of following suit too. So, like I said, everything's cumulative, to your point, like, it exists everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, trends that you're loving and trends that you're hating right
Okay,
now.
trends that I am loving. I love the deconstructed timeline, right? I think Gen Z is doing this specifically. Millennials were very much like, we are going to have a ceremony, and then we are going to have a cocktail hour, and then we are going to have a party, and then we might have an after party. Gen Z is like, forget it. We hate that. We're getting married at different times of the day, different times of the week. We're getting married and we're going to have our reception first and we're going to have our ceremony by ourselves, or we're going to flip the order of things and have cocktail hour first. I think that is so intriguing to me. And as someone who got married in the middle of the day, because I was just like, I just don't, I don't know. I don't want to wait all day to get married. I just want to get married. I think the idea of like doing things on your own timeline and creating a timeline that resonates with you, that is actually more fun for guests. Like, ceremony is like, you kind of come to a wedding and sit, like you come to a wedding and sit versus like if you could come to a wedding and mingle and break the ice and then sit. And I just think it creates a different tone, a different vibe, a different experience. So I think the idea of being more mindful of that and the guest experience in general, super fascinating to me. I love the evolution of dessert. I think wedding cake became an afterthought of sorts, and I love that, like, people are, like, putting their name on a tiramisu or building their cake in the middle or putting their cakes down an entire tablescape and saying, "Have at it." I think that's so fun, and, like, it kind of reinvented something that, like, objectively wasn't super fun in the past. I love the idea of embroidery and engraving. I think we also saw that at ornament exchange with engraved lighters. I
Yeah.
think engraving, embroidery has been huge for a long time. And like the idea of the activation and the station and the reinterpretation of the favor, super fun, super experiential, and I think that like speaks to what we want to do right now. Yeah, I think those are a few things that I'm loving right now. As far as what I'm hating, I don't wanna be a hater, but I really don't like the draped tablescape tablecloths that are bunchy. I just like things just fall over. Like, that's just not it's not for me. It's not I just can't get over it. I think calla lilies are done. I think neck I think neckties are done. I saw something recently that, like, bouquets with long stems are, coming back. I'm like, "Please, God, no." I really
Yeah.
bouquets with long stems to come back. Yeah, and I think, like, just, like, the what I've seen on a lot of, like, social media sites, social first places, weddings sometimes just feel so cold and, like, sculptural in a way that doesn't feel inviting or warm at all. Um,
Yeah.
it's just, like, one long I don't know, it's curved, and then there's, like, just, like, these little block seatings around it, and it's, like, I don't know. It's just not for me. I think weddings are supposed to be fun and warm and inviting and cozy, and that, like, ultra minimalist thing is not for me.
And it also can take away from the function of
100%.
it because we can't let your design disrupt the function and the guest experience, the service. Like if you have these tables that are in a way that service can't get to you,
Totally. Yeah.
like don't you want your wine
Right.
topped
Like,
off?
don't you wanna be comfortable in
I
your
know.
seat? You're gonna be spending a
Yeah.
good amount of time. I think that's, like, what I'm getting at, like,
Yeah.
when I think
Yeah.
because of social and because of things and honestly, I think because of AI in a lot of ways too, we're seeing a lot of AI renderings, we're seeing a lot of, like, AI placements or, we're dropping things in the middle of the desert, and you don't know if it's real or not. I think, like, the idea of that, people are like, "That's so cool. I want that." I'm like, "But that is actually going to feel terrible even if it looks really cool." So, yeah, I think the idea of it's kind of like form over function right now, and I wanna get us back to a place of, like, function meets form.
Oh my gosh. Speaking my language. I'm all about the service
Totally.
side of it. That's
Totally.
amazing. Okay. So, in kind of talking about like being a disruptor, you're not a hater, but you do have a tough love
No. Yeah.
series. So, how did that start and what type of content do you think that people like
Yeah.
enjoy
So
through
it
that?
actually is funny because it was born out of me being a hater. So the very first TikTok, which I am a little bit of a hater. I don't wanna say I'm not because I am. That's kind of my whole job.
You
Yeah, like,
have
it's our
opinions.
job to have
I let's call it hot
right,
takes.
exactly.
They're
Yeah.
hot takes. Yeah.
Well, when I my first video I ever made on TikTok went, like, pretty viral, and I was shocked. I was like, "Oh, I've never gone viral before in my life, so what is happening?" And it was I posted a video about, 3 things that me as a former weddings editor absolutely hated about today's weddings. And it went bonkers, and it had a lot of, like, there were a lot of opinions in the comments, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I actually I have to stand on my business, but, like, I'm also an empath, and I don't like being yelled at on the internet." So, like, there's also that. So I was like, "Okay, how can I do this in a way that's a little bit more constructive and maybe a little bit more helpful without, like, objectively hating on things?" So the Tough Love series was actually a spin on things I hate about weddings because I just felt kind of icky doing that, and I wanted to feel like I just feel like my whole job, my whole point is to be helpful. And I'm like, I was talking to my husband, he's like, "Is that who you wanna be on the internet?" And I was like, "That's such a good point, Zach. It's really not who I wanna be on the internet." So Tough Love came out of that, and I think that is what people want. They wanna hear things that they should and shouldn't do. They wanna hear why. They want good, valid reasons, and I think, like, this whole, like, I've always learned in media and editorial that a touch of a negative spin on anything, as mean as that is always gonna perform better than, "This is our favorite, this is the best." The tough love of it all, the things we hate of it all is always gonna perform a little bit better. So, packaging, I went in knowing, like, that was always gonna be a more impactful, more, like, shareable, reachable, better for engagement type of packaging in general. So that's kind of where it came from, and I need to get back into it. I need to post some videos. Yeah, but it's fun. It's fun. Yeah.
Just talking, I think it must have been an ornament exchange. I was talking to some planners about like nobody likes a yes
Okay.
man, right? Like you nobody likes going into everybody's had that experience where you're in a clothing store and you have that one pushy salesperson who just says everything looks great on you even though you know like it doesn't. You are paying for that person to be honest, and sometimes the honesty leads to like a negative that it's everybody appreciates honesty and we don't get much of
Yeah.
that.
I also think it's, like, a lot of the couples that are watching my content, and this is just so true for the wedding experience in general, you don't know what you don't know. Most people have not been married before once they are getting married or planning a wedding of the scale that, we are used to. And even if it's not the scale that we're used to, like, it's the first time hiring a photographer, it's your first time really for a lot of folks, it's, like, the first time they're ever really getting hair and makeup or buying something really expensive. It's their first joint purchase as a couple in a big way. So there's a lot of firsts, and I think, like, people need a spirit guide. They need somebody to guide them through, and this is where I think, like, I see a lot of holes in terms of social content for our industry as well. People, like, if we don't give them the information, they will kind of talk amongst themselves and come up with that information, and it might not be true, it might not be correct. So that's why I'm a really big advocate of, like, get on there, start you don't have to talk to a camera, there are so many ways to do this now with carousels, infographics. Make the content that creates that trust, that tells the truth, and if you build it, they will come. Like, I really kind of believe in that. I don't think people are doing that enough.
You just answered what was going to be my next question, which was, what do couples want to see more of from wedding professionals online, and should it be like, you know, as from your point of view, like done with an editor's precision or more spontaneous? And does that differ from TikTok and Instagram, or does it even
Yeah,
matter?
yeah, totally. I mean, I think it definitely depends on your brand, right? And it depends on where you're based, right? Like, a planner operating in the South is not the same as a planner operating on the Northeast if they are kind of, stuck in those regions, right? Like, everybody speaks to a different person, everybody has a different ideal client. But I think in terms of, like, the content that people wanna see, they wanna know that they can trust you before they have an intake call. And I think this is why we're getting a lot of, "Well, I'm getting so many inquiries and I'm not converting on as many as I used to." And I'm like, "Well, that's because the game has changed." Gen Z is interviewing more professionals for their weddings, more than millennials ever did. So there's going to be more intake calls, more intake views, and just by default, less conversion. So I think what they're looking for is like vibe, trust, and like honestly, for me, it's like you need to kind of have all of those things established before you hop on the call. Content, social is your first line of defense for that. It is like, how much do you know? I don't feel like it's just like a pretty picture game anymore. It is to some extent living portfolio and making sure that relevant work is up there. I do a lot of that. But I think strategy, like what are your values? Like stand on those, talk about those. What does hospitality mean to you? What does a planning cycle look like for a couple? What is a process? Like what I've seen been really impactful in terms of website is like this is like a bulleted timeline of what working with me is going to look like. Gen Z needs distilled information. They're used to chat GPT, they're used to AI, they're used to bulleted lists. And that's something that I learned in media too. Bulleted lists, big rewards. So I think kind of distilling this information down for them from site to social, allowing them to understand that you know what you're doing, that you're worth the
Yeah.
investment, kind of on that end would just really help by the time you get to that intake call. So I think that's why it's worth doing and the type of content that they want. TikTok versus Instagram, I would say, Instagram is always going to be a little bit more buttoned up. And I think TikTok is the place to go live or like, talk to the camera a little bit more, be a little funnier, be a little looser. If you're going to like share something vulnerable, I feel like TikTok's a great place to do that too. But I think like, again,
Yeah.
depends on your brand. There are a lot of people like can get away with cross posting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Um, I'm going to jump around just because we're brushing on the topic of authenticity. I've talked about authenticity a lot on this podcast. And I think representing yourself in an authentic way that conveys trust, like you said, I think that's wonderful, and super, super important. And now let's apply authenticity to doing the wedding. So, when we're in this overly saturated digital world, I think people just like crave that human connection and realness, and how important it is to design an event that has soul and has meaning. And I know you've posted a little bit about that, but like talk on what's your take on honoring family legacy, nostalgia, staying true to the individuality of the couple, and paying attention or not paying attention to wedding
Yeah.
rules.
Again, this is kind of like what I love about the Gen Z generation in general. I think like they are the generation of if it doesn't serve me, I'm not doing it. And I think there's restraints to that, right? Like I think everybody needs to remember that a wedding is a family event too. It's actually a double family event. It's a double family reunion. So there are always going to be feelings about what you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing. But I think the couple should be the true north and they should decide what they want to do and they should leave the things that don't serve them at all. But I do think it's nice to be mindful of like what families feel and, what traditions will be meaningful to them. And a lot of times you can reinvent traditions or do things a little differently to make them feel a little bit more true to you. Like taking your parents' wedding topper, reinventing your wedding dress. You don't have to wear it. You can turn it into a really cute two-piece, which I know people have mixed feelings about, but I've seen some really cute ones.
Yeah.
Whether it's, religion or whether it's, honoring, your parents with a dance that they dance to. I think there are a lot of ways to kind of work it all in. And in a way that speaks to you, in a way that's authentic to you. Um, and I think it's important. I think it's important to balance. I think, be true to who you are and absolutely don't do anything that doesn't work for you. I know I sure didn't. But, like just kind of be keeping in mind that this is a family event, double family event, and some traditions are good. Like some traditions are wonderful. They
Yeah.
connect you to a lineage of weddings that came before you. You don't get a chance to redo it. So I think people are like the idea of traditionless weddings, I was always like, "Guys, no." Like, family portraiture, I think, is a really hotly debated one, like, people are like, "I don't wanna take any family photos at my wedding. I think it's going to just be disruptive. I think, it's gonna disrupt the timeline, people don't wanna sit for those." And I'm like, "Oh my god." My dad died 6 months after my wedding. If I didn't have we those are fantastic photos of him that I will have forever. So, like, it's you don't realize like, it really is true that your wedding is, like, one of the only times in your life that everybody loves in the room. And, okay, so then, like, get videography involved if you want something more fun. Get a living portrait. Get something do something else that makes it feel a little bit more fresh, but, yeah, we can't not every tradition is something that should be passed up.
Right. Oh, love that. But let's talk about your professional journey. How has so for people who don't know, you were in a magazine for over a
Mhm.
decade. Was it
Yes,
over a decade or
just
about a
about, yep.
decade? Okay, so with Martha Stewart Wedding Magazine, Brides Magazine, and then your world changed suddenly. You were let go, and I remember even seeing your posts, and it was like, wait, what? Like real time. You address that in a very like raw, real, authentic way, and let the whole industry know, like, oh my god, I just lost my job. Um, so how has that shaped you? And do you consider that a gift? Because you've been very vocal about
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I had a lot of people reach out to me after I got let go being like, "That was crazy what you posted." Like, that was nobody talks about getting let go or laid off in a way that's like people hide it. People don't post about it, and, like, it's a personal choice, but for me, I was like, I share so much of myself online and with you all, and I've always tried to be, like, the most transparent editor out there because I feel like, the editorial world in general is, like, shrouded in mystery for good reason in a lot of ways. But I always was like, "No, I don't actually know what to do." I don't I don't actually quite know what to do.
Yeah.
So when I posted that, it became like a vehicle for what I did ultimately end up doing. There was so much support, so much just love and acceptance and kindness, and it was immediately like, "Sorry, let's get on a call. Let's talk this through. Let's figure out a business plan. Like, don't go back to the corporate world. You don't wanna do that." And I was like, "No, I really don't." I'll never forget the feeling after I got laid off of, I can't go sit an interview right now. I just can't be interviewed by somebody for another corporate job. Like, it felt completely inherently wrong, to do that, and I was like, "Okay, then I have to work, so if I'm not gonna go back into the corporate world, what the heck am I gonna do?" And the support of the industry, being vulnerable, being authentic in that way really kind of led to what I am doing now. And now I 100% see it as a gift. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that it happened at the top of the year and that I'm in a totally different place at the end of the year. And I feel so grateful that I'm still able to, be part of this industry that I've cared about for so long and been part of for so long. That has been very, very good to me. And I'm glad to be able to get back to it now in a way that is a little bit more actionably helpful.
Yeah. And so explain exactly what it is that you do, how you help
Yeah,
vendors.
definitely. So I basically take all of that editorial knowledge that I have gleaned over the past decade and I funnel that into website, social, copy, all of that good stuff. So right now I'm working on a lot of, website curation projects. I'm working on, some social strategy, managing a few folks' social pages, rewriting everybody's copy. So I'm kind of like, I always joke like editors are jacks of all trades, and now I kind of am too. I help with submissions, although I feel like I know that we'll talk about this too. I do feel like the publication landscape has changed, so I tend to be a little bit more like, "I'm not gonna take your money unless we have a really good shot." So I'm a little bit more pulled back with that, which I think was a surprise to a lot of people. I thought that they thought I would go like the PR agency or that route, but I'm like, I just feel like publications are different now. So yeah, I do a lot of things. I also have like long lead consulting that I'm doing where I'm working with clients on like 3 to 6 months so we can kind of like holistically overhaul their brands, get them into a better position from site, social, like how they show up, everything. So there's
Yeah.
there's lots. There's lots. I'm really grateful to be doing it all.
That's so great. Do you feel like you have I mean, I feel like this is kind of an obvious question, but like the freedom that you have doing it for yourself, um, do you feel like you have that much more freedom? And do you feel like your voice and the things that you look at and your opinions are different than they
Yeah.
were because you're representing
Yeah,
yourself?
I think I'm freer, for sure. I think, like, there was always, when you're working for a brand, I was media trained. I've been, like, trained for, like, GMA, like, big press for a long time, and there's always a level of, you kind of have to put that, filter up in a lot of ways of everything that kinda comes out of your mouth is careful. everything that you post is kind of not agonized over, but you kind of look at it from 40 different angles. And I'm not saying that I don't do that now. I think it's really important to have that filter. I'm really grateful for it, because I think it helps you make content that is respectful and kind. And like I said, it helped me evolve out of that hater perspective. I was like, this doesn't feel right for me. But I do think, I'm freer with what I can say. I'm able to be really real about how I feel the publication landscape is, what is worth it, what its detriments are. Because, when somebody works inside of something and is paid by it, it's very hard to be like, to criticize it. But that is no longer true. So, I'm free. And I say that on a lot of my TikToks. I'm like, who no longer works for those publications, so she can say whatever she wants. Uh, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at social. That's how I lead with my clients, and I'm an open book.
Well, let's talk about publication because you mentioned it. Is getting published still relevant or important? And, just with the death of so many print magazines. And then there's also this conundrum of do I post in real time this amazing, amazing content? Or do I wait? Which, for people who don't know, like if you've got a big publication who wants exclusivity and wants to put out your work, sometimes that looks like waiting on that, sitting on that content for months, and this world is just moving too fast. So what does one do?
This is why I think publications are failing in general. Print obviously could not be reactive. Digital is no longer able to be as reactive as social first sites and websites and Instagram accounts are able to be reactive. So I think this idea of like sitting on content to wait for something that might be borderline archaic at this point is a really bad marketing decision. There are always going to be certain publications, certain things worth waiting for. Listen, the Vogue of it all, right? Like, but I always have always really believed, and I infinitely believe it more now that publication is an internal game in a lot of ways. It is industry specific. It is about industry clout. We are looking for that level of authority. It's like this stepping stone milestone that everybody wants to hit and they want to be able to like post the Vogue photo, which they can't even do anymore because that's illegal. Or, like so like all of
Yeah.
these things I think we're doing for us and we're not necessarily doing for our clients. Sure, there are always going to be clients that want to be published. Okay, sure. They're always going to be, and that's if that's something that your client wants, then there are avenues that can be pursued. But I don't think couples are looking to these sites. You notice that, like when I was like, where do you look for inspiration? It wasn't like wedding publications, because I don't think couples are looking at them anymore beyond what they're being served on the internet, like through the algorithm. And I just think like it's less relevant for couples planning now, getting inspired now. Before it should be less of it should be a smaller piece of the pie in our world now.
Yeah.
And that's just my truth. I'm excited about what's to come. Print, yeah, is gone. And there are very few brides I don't even know, like, there's nobody working there, so who knows? I mean, I'm really excited about the launch of Liz Austin's Perfect. I think that's gonna be really fabulous. I've seen the back end of that. It's truly gorgeous. I think it's gonna be really exciting. I love Together Journal. There are a bunch of other places, right? Go regional, go to your local mags, go back to that. There's always, like, Carrots and Cake and Style Me Pretty, but a lot of these are, like, membership preferred and all of that, and I tell people, "Not worth your time, not worth your
Right.
time." So,
Right. But what you're saying is that it's the client doesn't
I don't
really
think
care.
so.
It's not like you have to have that to legitimize your
I
brand
don't think so.
anymore.
I mean, I really I
Yeah.
I remember talking to a bride friend of mine, and she knew what I did, and she's like, "I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think I went to your site once when I was planning my wedding." And I was like, "Ouch," but also, like, isn't that interesting? I thought that that was pretty telling. And that's why and, like, that's true, like, these sites are dying for a reason, and it's because of not being able to be reactive.
Yeah.
Like
Well, and
yeah, no, go
also
ahead.
every year, the lists get published and then inevitably vendors get like all out bent out of shape because they're not on the list or somebody's on the list who
Should we be on the
hasn't been
list?
on,
Right.
all those things, and I think what do you think? Like, people just need to, like, relax and just do their
Well, the
thing?
lists are kind of contrived these days. Like, a lot of them are I don't know. There's some payment behind some of them. And
Yeah,
I don't think
definitely.
that you can ever to me, the second anybody pays for any type of status on a list like that, the entire list crumbles. That was something that I was, adamant about in my career. This is not a monetized like type of experience. Like this has to be merit, it has to be vetted. And there was never a good way. There was always somebody who was upset. There was always somebody like these were disastrous. They were horrible to put together. People hated you. It was my least favorite part of the job, for sure. So, like, that also says it too. It's like you're never feeling like you're getting it 100% right. And I've also seen, like, these lists get it, like, 100% wrong in a lot of ways where people who have been, like, rewarded through for, like, a lots of publications don't make it, and it's like, "For what?" So I feel like they're contrived in general. I Anybody who spends time crying over a list, I'm like, "Oh my god, girl, pick yourself up. Nobody cares." Nobody
Yeah,
cares. We don't care. Clients don't care. It's the same thing as publication. I've never been published. Nobody cares but this industry. Nobody and I said yesterday, like, publications I wrote on Instagram in support of Liz and Perfet, which again, I'm she's an amazing person and I think she's going to do good things. But like publications are what we make them. That's what it is.
right.
They do not have power unless we give them that power. And I think, like, holding our features hostage and, it's for what? For what? So I think, like, everybody's gotta take a deep breath about this. The landscape has changed. The priorities need to shift. I wouldn't sit on your weddings. I would market your weddings. Unless you're gonna get a quick turnaround, unless it's gonna be something that's gonna be up and out, I would say just post it. Post it because the rules need to change on their end too. If they're gonna make you wait for 6 months, you should have full creative permission to social your weddings. I know why they don't because they wanna splash it, but it's not fair, and it's not gonna serve them in
Yeah,
the end, so, yeah.
yeah. And I mean, 6 months,
Year,
and especially with the booking
yeah,
window. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you miss out on then you have a client who sees that publication, and then they're like, "Oh, I wanna book you." Like, the full circle loop of the benefit is that's like a 2-year
yeah, and I
window
just
of
exactly,
benefit.
and, like, I mean, even
Yeah,
some of, like, the smaller mags, it was, like, a 5-month wait, and I'm like, "Okay, I don't think they really cared about social," but it's still true. Like, you can't sit on things. Things are gonna look different in 6 months too, and then by the time you post that content, like, that whole content plan that you had ready to roll out, like, I just then it's tired and the trends are different, and now the wedding's been done, somebody's
totally.
already copied you or somebody's already done it
Yeah,
too,
for sure.
like, gotta push out your work. I believe that. Yeah.
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 That's good. If you could change one foundational thing about how weddings are
Mhm.
talked about or approached, what would it be?
I think financial transparency on both sides. I think it's a hard thing to talk about. Money is a really hard thing to talk about. Um, I think couples are unfairly critical of our industry in general, which is made up of a lot of small businesses, most of them women led. And I think that they are distrustful of pricing and what things cost because they don't understand. And what I try to say, and this is like an idea that I've had, I'm like, you are literally taking 200 people out to dinner and you are also inviting them to a concert. And then you are also moving all of that to a different country a lot of times. How much do you think that is going to cost? Like to me, it's like, why don't you think that's going to be $1 million? Because to me, that sounds like it should be $1 million. And so I think like there's a level of like, everybody's got to wake up the couple side and stop being like the victim in this because nobody's victimizing you. But then, like to my point earlier, if we are not giving them the information, if we are not being transparent about why things cost what they cost, they are going to continue to cry, woe is me, play the victim, and not understand. And I think like that's what I mean. It's like a double-sided problem where if we could change how things are talked about, how things just, if there's one thing that we could do better it would be to talk about pricing in a way that was helpful, understanding what price per head means and how, when you bring that guest count down, you can maximize, what you're doing because that price per head gets higher, you can do a little bit more. Understanding like the things that actually move the needle with the budget, what the priorities actually should be, where your big bucket costs are always going to be. I think like that, like a money series from a planner at a mid-market to entry luxury would be super helpful. And nobody does that.
Yeah.
Nobody talks because they don't want to, because people do different pricings for different things and get deals or don't. But I just think like somebody should do it because it's
Love it.
do
Maybe
it.
I'll do it because that is such
Do
a
it.
great I've posted a lot about like understanding percentage, understanding the why behind things because you're right, people don't talk and then brides get on Reddit and then there's this whole like the wedding industry's out to get you, screw you over, all the things. And I think because the industry internally doesn't
Right.
talk, there's like this mystery of how are you making money or are they making money? And it's like internally
Exactly.
distrustful too. And it's
It
so
is.
wrong.
Yeah. I think it's just, I think what I have seen on social, being on social, like wedding talk for the past, I don't know, 8 months after never using TikTok in my life, it's so much like, they are charging this and they are duping us guys. Like this is so dumb. They are duping us. I'm like, I don't know how to tell you that they're not duping you. It's not for you then. There's a
Yeah.
vendor for you at every price point, and certain people cost what they cost because of the value that they bring, and it's not that other people at different price points don't bring that value. It just is what it is. Um,
It's just
yeah,
different. I say all the time, like, would you go into a luxury car dealership and complain and
right,
cry that you can't afford that car? No, you would shop somewhere
right,
else. And it is what it is. I think also women, you mentioned a lot of people in our industry are women owned businesses. And I do think that there's a truth that women don't feel as
totally,
confident talking about
totally.
money. And I think it needs to change and own your pricing, own what your worth is. You're the only person who can determine your value. And you really have to have a take it or leave it mentality. If you're charging a higher percentage than everyone else or a higher rate, your conversion rate
Of
will be
course,
lower. So like everybody's different and you just have to be confident in enough in yourself and I always say this too. Be mindful of who's in the lane next to you, but
totally.
like drive your own damn car.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
know that the rules have changed. I think like that's what a lot of us come from, like you don't talk about money. You don't talk about it. It's buttoned up, especially to your point about being a woman, and like these are women owned business who are like, I'm not doing that. But this new generation, like, they are gonna want to know why things cost. It's not always like I'm not gonna pay it. It's actually not. It's like they just wanna understand, and I think, like, it needs to be a little bit more transparency to help them understand in a way that is digestible to them. No more averages, no more this, no more that. This is how much, like, I think what Nancy Narking does is genius and should be replicated, and could be used as a model, I think, for helping people understand what pricing is. But I just think it needs to be done. It's not it's what they need.
And also your discomfort, your own personal discomfort is may not be your
Exactly,
client's discomfort
exactly.
level. And so if you get a number back that makes you cringe or you don't wanna tell them because you're afraid they're gonna, like, get sticker shock and run away, like, you have to be brave enough to convey it. If they're asking for something, you deliver it, and then the decision-making power is on the client to decide do they want it or do they not. So it's a lot of bravery, and if you can talk with confidence, you're conveying that confidence to the client. Okay, again, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. Um, yeah, so
Completely, completely agree.
let's talk about any projects that you have coming up. I've seen a few launches online. What do you have going on? What are you excited about? What's coming down
Oh,
the
well,
pipeline?
I'm about to practice what I preach and launch my own website, which is hilarious that I have not had one for a full year. That's abysmal. But I will be doing that in January. I just had some branding done, which I'm, like, truly so happy with and so excited to do. I have a curation guide that I am almost done with, which I am really excited to share because it's more accessibly priced. It's for anybody who's really kind of hoping to kinda sit down with their website this year or early next year is when it's gonna come out, and kind of refresh their website, their socials with the previous season of work. So I think it will be really helpful. And again, more accessibly priced. Just so again, I want to be helpful. I want to help people who can afford me, can't afford me, whatever. So that's exciting. And then yeah, I'm always taking new clients. Starting in February, I think right now. So curation, copy, all that good stuff. Just excited to kind of continue to deep dive next year. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Um, and then I always like to end podcasts on just asking you, what are your top 3 takeaways? What would you like to leave listeners with after they've listened to what I think has been a really value packed
Yeah.
conversation?
I think hyping others up is one of the best forms of marketing to exist. I think saying other people's names in rooms, I think sharing people's work on social, I think commenting and being engaged is the best thing that you can do to kind of build a network and support each other. Everybody's always asking me, like, how do I meet that planner or how do I connect with that person? And I'm like, well, kind of like isn't it great to be a cheerleader? Like, isn't that a great first it seems so simple, but it's the reason why I've been able to have a business. It's the reason people said my names in rooms. I've said many people's names in rooms, and I think, like, that does not go unrecognized in this industry. I think that internal support goes a long way. So hype each other up on social and in rooms. I think mistakes happen, right? But it's just how you move forward from them and what you do with it to move forward. I think, like, especially in my first year of business, I've done certain things where I'm like, oh man, um, ah, but it's just like how you move forward. Like it is what it is, and you learn and you move forward. And I think my last one is it is genuinely never too late to reinvent. Reinvention can happen at any time, at any point, when you expect it, when it's welcome or when it's not welcome, especially when it's not welcome a lot of the times. And there are amazing things waiting on the other side of that reinvention.
So good. So well said. Thank you.
Reagan, thank you.
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to share this with everyone. And you were just dream guests. So, Sarah, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your lessons and your insights. Just very grateful to
Thank you
have
so
you.
much. I appreciate you having me.